Hi students, how are you all? Today I am going to teach you styles and areas of child rearing, its influences on the development. The human baby at birth is quite helpless. Left to himself, the baby will perish without care. It is the parents who take care of all the needs of the baby, such as feeding, clothing, personal cleanliness, and health care. Besides taking care of the physical needs of the baby, parents also fulfill the psychological needs such as love, affection, and feeling of security. From the time the baby reaches the age of simple understanding, the parents prepare him to be a member of the society by teaching him rules and behavior. Practices such as feeding, weaning, toilet training, health care in terms of love, affection, and security feeling such as cuddling, soothing are called child rearing. Child rearing practices plays an important role in the development of the personality of an individual. The components of personality of an individual such as habits, attitudes, interests, aspirations, values, socio-emotional behavior and intellectual performance are much influenced by the way in which a child has been reached. The process of child rearing process is also known as parenting. By learning about the styles and areas of child rearing practices, students learn about meaning and importance of child rearing practices, styles and areas of child rearing practices, influence of child rearing practices on the development of children. Now let us see the styles of child rearing practices. Parental styles are defined as set of attitudes, beliefs and goals of parents have put into practice in their daily interactions with their children. Parents adopt many styles from quite strict to a very permissive one, and a child reared in one type of family may be markedly different from a child reared in another type of family. Styles of child rearing adopted by the parents is determined by many factors. These factors are social class, family size, educational status of the parents, occupation of the parent, traditional practices of the society, culture, religion, gender, number of siblings, and ordinal position of the child. Now let us see how the social status affects the child rearing practices. Stressful social expectations, economic conditions have great effect on child rearing. Parents having greater marital conflicts, suffering from deaths and single parent households show their sufferings on their innocent children. Child abuse is most frequent in families living in stressful environment. Researchers have proved that the children of middle class are said to be honest, happy, well-mannered and considerate. A major goal for middle class parents is to teach the children to be self-disciplined and self-directed, who think for themselves and who want to act in a socially accepted manner. On the other hand, working and lower class parents tend to be more interested in conformity, obedience, respect for authority, neatness and cleanliness in poor families, whereas children needs may not be fulfilled. They may be malnourished. In some families, children are the child laborers. Family size. The nuclear family in which father, mother and the child live together. In extended families, parents, brothers with their families, grandparents Unmarried sisters, widowed sisters live together. The size and characteristics varies, and this has an effect on the amount of affection and stimulation, opportunities for peer play, and the number of adult models children have to imitate and learn. Due to divorce, separation, or death of any one parent, the family becomes a one parent family or single parent family. The chronic stress and practical problems experienced by parents in such families are reflected in child rearing practices. It is very difficult to fulfill the needs of the children in such families and very much insecure or over dependent. Educational status of the children, parents. In India, majority of the people live in rural areas. Child rearing practices are followed what was practiced by the parents and grandparents. The educated women follow the practices what is ideal as per doctor's advice. Now let us see how the occupation of the parent affects or influences the child rearing practices. Due to modernization and improved women employment, both the mother and father are working in most of the families. Thus, the occupation keep away the parents from the child. The child is left in the hands of ayahs or servants. These children feel insecure, rejected, and have no proper role model for the ideal behavior. Sometimes these children get into bad company. The negative occupation of the parents, such as smugglers, alcohol production, pushes the child to acquire bad values. Traditional practices of the society. In this 21st century also, in remote villages and tribal areas, parents exercise the rearing practices that are followed by their mothers, grandmothers. For example, the practice of feeding colostrum to the newborn baby may not be there. Instead, sugar water is given. Parents pamper their children very much. Whereas in urban area, due to women education, awareness program through mass media and the facilities available, parents follow the child rearing practices. Culture. Child rearing practices are embedded in the culture and determine to a large extent the behavior and expectations surrounding a child's birth and infancy. Cultural practices are followed to rear the child in tribal areas and remote villages. Children are breastfed for longer period, in some families even till 5 or 6 years. In some society, the child is fed at any time they wake up. Due to this, sleep pattern of the child is affected. Toilet practices are started very later. Culture influences child development by creating an environment of values and beliefs that shapes parenting. Religion. Various religious beliefs lead differences in methods and goals of child rearing and training. The differences may vary from degrees of punishments and disciplinary practices used by the parents to emphasis on self-reliance, and also difference in attitude towards achievements among children have been linked to the religion of their parents. Now let us see how gender is related with the child rearing practices. From the moment of birth, girls and boys are treated differently. Boys are fed for longer duration. Later, favorable foods are provided, allowed to go out often than the girls. Boys' health care is taken in the best hospital and sent to the reputed school. Research evidences prove that the mortality and morbidity rates are higher for girls and the academic achievements is lower for girls, which is the Impact of gender disparity shown in child rearing practices. Number of siblings. Number of children in the family determines the kind of child rearing process. The only child, only girl child among many boys, only boy child among many girls are taken care in a better way than the other children in the family. Sometimes parents may pamper too much. The result is the child may be a dependent one. Ordinal position of the child, the firstborn and the lastborn are read very carefully by the parents without any hesitations. This may develop the superior attitude among them and inferior complex among the other children. Styles of child rearing practices. Now, parents adopt many parenting styles, from quite strict to very permissive one, and a child reared in one type of family may markedly different from a child reared in another type. There are 3 parenting styles. Good knowledge about the parenting styles and the impact of adopting specific parenting style will help to confine to the appropriate one. The 3 styles of child rearing practices are authoritarian, democratic and permissive style. Let us see what are the characteristics of the authoritarian style of child rearing practices. Very rigid, parents are very punitive, very cold, lack of freedom for expression of thought and action, decision maker for the child, constantly criticizes, parents expects unattainable standards, pays little recognition, disapproves child's doings, deprives opportunities, adopts corporal punishments, demands unquestioning obedience, emphasizes on perfection. What would be the effect on children if these characteristics are practiced? They would be introverted, unsociable, anxious, unfriendly, uncertain, withdrawn, sensitive, hostile, fantasies, rebellious nature, lack of curiosity, revolting nature, lacks originality and creativity, very resentfulness, feels insecure, lacks self-confidence, obstinate, and fear of punishment and shy, dishonest, suspicious. Now let us see the next style, democratic child rearing practices. In this, the parents are very firm, sets limits and goals, uses reasoning, encourages independence, more receptive to discouragement, explains rules and regulations clearly, punishes appropriately, communicates rationale for punishment, rewards with praise, expresses signs of approval, educates to behave appropriately, plans for fostering self-discipline, motivates child to live up to expectations. We can see the effect on children, like children used to be likable, they exhibit positive attitude, they are very self-reliant, takes initiativeness in everything, interdependent, has self-control, assertiveness, achieves greater creativity, very cooperative, deals effectively with the obstacles, confident, has motivation to achieve, very successful, independent, socially adjustable, active, outgoing, spontaneous. The third style of child rearing practice is permissive style. The characteristics of this style are no control, non-demanding, warm, inconsistent, uninvolvement, lack of interest and concern, no punishment for wrongdoings, no role model. These children exhibits immature behavior, dependent, very much confused, fearful, very anxiety, aggressiveness, lack of conformity to social roles, feels insecure, unable to differentiate between right and wrong. They develop illusion and resentfulness. From this we can understand that affection-oriented parenting style is more effective than power-oriented parenting style. To discipline children, parents may attempt the following: become an attached parent, know the child well, get the child respect others, talk and listen to the child, be a positive role model, provide clear and adequate information, teach the child pro-social behavior and attitudes, adopt an instrumental approach, avoid corporal punishments. When the child misbehaves, parents have to redirect positively, verbalize feelings, suggest natural consequences, give choices, physically guide them, maintain eye control, withdraw privileges for a short while, practice temporary isolation and distract. Areas of child rearing. What are all the various areas? Feeding, weaning, sleeping, toilet training, clothing, rewards and punishments, disciplining, and habit formation. If we take feeding, there are three kinds: breastfeeding, artificial feeding, supplementary feeding. Whether breastfeed or bottle fed children, there can be demand feeding or schedule feeding. If we go for toilet training, bowel training, bladder training. Now let us listen the feeding aspects in detail. The first 2 years of life, characterized by rapid physical development, is a period in which many changes that affect feeding and food intake occur. The adequacy of nutrient intake influences the interaction of children with the environment. Healthy, well-nourished children have the energy to respond to and learn from stimuli, interact with parents and caregivers that encourages bonding and attachment. Breastfeeding. A healthy mother's milk contains practically everything a baby needs for nourishment. Breastfed babies are healthier and have had fewer illness than bottle-fed babies. The sucking of the hungry baby is better than anything else that stimulates a mother's breast to make milk. For the first few days, a thick yellowish fluid called colostrum comes from the mother's breast. Colostrum is very rich in vitamins and minerals. It also contains antibodies which possesses strong antiviral activity. During this time, if the baby is allowed to nurse at regular intervals, his sucking stimulates the production of breast milk. The aim of feeding is to produce a well-nourished baby and a relaxed, happy mother. The significance of feeding is the atmosphere in which the feeding takes place and the quality of relationship between the mother, father and the child. What are all the advantages of breastfeeding to the baby? If we see the nutritional factors, breast milk is the natural food to the infant. It is a perfectly balanced food. Nutritional components are well suited to the infant's digestion. Mortality and morbidity rate of breastfed babies is lower than that of bottle-fed babies. Immunological factors: lysozyme, lactoferrin, immunoglobulins, fatty acids and monoglycerides are present in colostrums as well as in breast milk. These factors are anti-infective properties of human milk. What are all the psychological factors? Infant derives a sense of security, a belongingness in the early mother and child relationship from the comfort of being held than from the feeding process. Other advantages are breast milk is sterile, warm, and ready for the baby. The need for sucking is fully satisfied in breastfeeding than in bottle feeding. Infant's jaw is more fully developed and teeth are less crowded as he must work harder to extract milk. Less danger of contamination and gastrointestinal problems. Low danger of incorrect formula. Human milk is at the right temperature. It costs less commercial preparation or very expensive. It needs no bottle, not necessary to mix. It is not allergic. It helps mother to lose weight. It establishes a warm relationship between the mother and the child. It is an important birth control factor. Risk of breast cancer is higher in women who have not fed their children. It is convenient to be administered by the mother at any place and at any time. What is artificial feeding? Feeding children with animal milk, usually using a bottle, is called artificial feeding. When the mother is unable to breastfeed the baby, owing to reasons such as the separation of the mother, sick or death of the mother, baby is given this feeding. This is also called as bottle feeding. Modification of formula for bottle feeding. A mixture of animal milk, water and sugar is a suitable preparation is called formula. The amount and kind of milk and sugar and amount of water that should be used vary according to the individual needs of the baby. The formula may be changed according to the suitability for the baby. If it is fresh cow's milk, to begin with, to 1 part of milk, 2 parts of water must be added. After 2 weeks or so, the proportion may be 1 part of milk and 1 part of water. Thus, slowly the quantity of water added must be decreased until the baby is able to digest milk alone. Special care to be taken in artificial feeding. Preparation of correct proportion of the formula. Sterilization of formula. Preparation of bottle. The size of the tea hole. Correct temperature of the milk. Correct posture of feeding. Giving fruit juices in between feed. Disadvantages of artificial feeding. Some mothers who are fashion conscious and worried about their figure prefer bottle feeding. Due to necessity, the working mothers too have to bottle feed their babies. Bottle feeding has its own disadvantages. Failure to milk secretion, under or overfeeding, gastrointestinal disorder, constipation, incidence of anemia, bottle addiction, high cost and time consuming. Now what is feeding schedule? Whether it is breastfeeding or artificial feeding, how often the baby is fed is most important. The frequency of feeding is referred to as demand feeding or schedule feeding. Demand feeding is feeding the baby when he demands feeding by way of crying without feeding at fixed intervals. Schedule feeding is feeding the baby at regular intervals. Most babies do well if fed every 4 hours. If the baby has established some routine, the baby will sleep in between the feeds and wake up at appropriate feeding. By this way, stomach upsets are prevented. Both mother and the baby do not feed restless or tired. Supplementary feeding. The foods that are given in addition to breast milk or bottled milk is known as supplementary feeding. After 3 months, mother's milk or bottled milk above cannot meet the growth requirement of the baby. Supplementary food items may be introduced in the following order. Second month, little quantity of fruit juice and cod liver oil. Third month, juices of cooked vegetables. Fourth month, mashed fruits and vegetables. Fifth month, well cooked and mashed cereals and pulses. Sixth month, egg boiled and given in small quantities. Seventh month, flesh foods may be given. 10th month, chapati and bread in small quantities. 1 year, encouraged to take all kinds of food that adults eat. Now, any one kind of food should be given at a time and starting with little quantities to be noted. A thin consistency of new food should be only given. If the child refuses, it may be omitted and reintroduced afterwards. Seasoning, spicy foods, fibrous foods may affect the child's stomach. Now, weaning. The process of transferring the child from the breast or bottle to semi-solid or solid food is known as weaning. Partial weaning means that the baby gets part of his nourishment from his mother's milk and part in the form of other foods such as cow's milk, mixture of cereals and vegetables. The optimum time to start weaning is 6 months. If the baby is very large and is still hungry, introduce semi-solid foods as early as 4 months. Beginning of mixed feeding is probably more convenient at the morning 10 o'clock or afternoon 2 o'clock. Everybody should note that only one new food to be given at a time. Very small quantity to be introduced and increased only when the child is able to digest. Food must be of smooth consistency. From 6 to 9 months of age, the baby should be used to feed mashed rice with dal or milk, mashed vegetables and fruits. Children need 4 or 5 weaning meals a day in addition to regular breastfeeding. After 9 months, food not be mashed. By about 1 year, child to be selected and eating foods cooked for the family. The frequency of consumption should be at least 4 or 5 times a day. Now, the next practice which has to be followed by the parents in the child rearing practice is sleeping. The child first learns to associate going to sleep with a pleasant feeling of food and warmth. A very young baby sleeps immediately after birth from 20 to 22 hours. A baby of 1 or 2 months old alone 18 to 22 hours. When the baby is about 6 months old, he is likely to sleep for 15 to 17 hours. The baby to be put to bed every night at the same time. The baby to be encouraged to brush at night. Any kind of medicine should not be given to make him sleep except under doctor's advice. Baby's dress to be loose, front button and easy to dress and undress himself. Don't take the baby for movies and car drive. Don't leave the baby alone in the day or night time. The baby should be allowed to sleep 15 to 20 hours by 0 to 5 months, 2/3 hours by 6 to 12 months, 10 to 12 hours sleep at night, plus 2 naps by 1 to 2 years. Regular sleep at night plus 1 nap by 2 years. Causes for disturbed sleep: strenuous day, lengthy afternoon nap, lack of physical exercise, lack of ventilation, wet napkins, too heavy or insufficient bed clothing, colic pain, pricking of an unfastened safety pin. Having identifies the reasons for disturbed or restless sleep, parents should work on removing the underlying cause for the same and promote sleep. Toilet training. Toilet training is very important aspect of child rearing practices. It has a significant purpose in hygiene and psychology of the child. Children are subjected easily to worm infections, so mothers are advised to impart proper toilet training to the children, that is, to wash their hands and feet with soap after going to toilet. If training is attempted too early, it often results in an inappropriate focus on the issue. Delay the time of child uses toilet independently. A toilet training is more effective if it is introduced when the child has already acquired a certain level of maturity in mental and muscular coordination. Signs of readiness for the child to start the toilet training: child should have a dry diaper for a long period, has bowel movements on a fairly regular schedule, shows desire and ability to follow instructions, is very anxious to be changed from wet to dry diaper, demonstrates in a recognizable way that urination or bowel movement is about to occur, has the ability to get the toilet or potty when she needs to go. Steps followed in the process of toilet training: introduce the potty to the child, train the child to remove clothing and sit on the potty, guide the child to the toilet, verbally orient the happenings, request the child to eliminate, keep the child entertained and appreciative for the actions. Bowel training. In the early months of infancy, the movement of bowel is a fairly simple reflex. As the child gets into the 2.5 years, he requires more voluntary control of the bowel movement. If the child moves his bowels within 10 minutes after the first meal of the day, then it is normal. The mother should not criticize the child. Slowly give the child several opportunities to practice the various steps involved, like removing the child's clothes, sitting on the potty or chair, etc. Bladder training. Control of the urinary bladder is something which the child gradually acquires by himself through physiological development. Toddlers achieve the capacity to physically control their bladder muscles between 18 to 24 months of age. The child's mental development plays an important role in the child's ability to control his bladder muscles. Parents should remain as patient as possible to train the child. Putting the child on the toilet at certain regular times, when the child wakes up in the morning, just after each meal, before and after naps, and at intervals in between. Healthcare. For an individual to grow well, health is very important. As the old adage goes, health is wealth. The parents should practice healthy hygiene habits to have a happy family. The parents should be educated on the importance of health and diet to bring down infant mortality and morbidity rates. For this, the parents should have fundamental knowledge of childcare and hygienic practices. The source of guidance for the mother for treatment of illness is the elders at home and neighborhood. Only when the child is seriously ill, the child has to be taken to the hospital. This can be reduced to a considerable extent by immunizing babies against fatal diseases like diphtheria, tetanus, etc. Triple antigen or DPT vaccines provides immunization against these diseases, namely diphtheria, pertussis and tetanus. BCG is the vaccine against tuberculosis. Vaccination facilitates are available at primary health centers and also at private clinics. Oral rehydration therapy will prevent dehydration. ORS consists of giving liquids like lime juice, coconut water and barley water. ORS is prepared by mixing 1 pinch of salt and 4 pinch of sugar in 1 glass of boiled and cooled water. The polio vaccine is an oral vaccine and it gives immunity against poliomyelitis. Before the end of first year of life, all vaccines should be administered. By 0 to 15 days, BCG and oral polio for 0 dose to be given. At 6 weeks, DPT-1 injection and oral polio vaccine 1 dose. At 10 weeks, DPT-2 injection, OPV 2 dose. At 14 weeks, DPT-3 and OPV 3 dose. At 9 months, measles injection. At 16 to 24 months, DPT booster dose. At 10 year and 16 years, TT, BCG, DPT and oral polio vaccine should be given. Vaccines cannot provide protection for a long period. Booster doses must be administered or suggested in the immunization schedule. Clothing. Clothes should be loose and comfortable, allowing free movement. The cloths should be shrink resistant so that they do not get tight after wash. The design should be simple. Too many hooks, zippers, buttons should be avoided. Plastic panties should be used sparingly. Overclothing results in rashes. Avoid covering that are heavy and airtight. A cap in which to sleep should be of knitted wool. Napkins must be soft and absorbent. Avoid using safety pin. It is better not to have any string around his neck. Clothes should be washed in homes and not by Dobby. Clothes should be dried well in sunlight. Should not use tight elastic in their underwear. Elastic may cause rashes and itching. Rewards and punishments. Rewards means any form of appreciation for an attainment. Rewards can be in the form of praises, hugs, kisses, materials. Rewards should be educational and motivational in nature. Rewards enhances children's cognitive development. Punishment is to put the child in a right path. Punishment should not be frequent. It should be given soon after the misdeed. Teach the children to differentiate right from the wrong. Reason out and talk with the children in appropriate ways. Habit formation. Habit is an accustomed way of doing things. It is a name given to the behavior which, often repeated, becomes automatic. The first time an act is performed slowly and may entail considerable thought. The second time, the act is performed with less thought and more quickly. As repetition follows, less and less thought is required, and finally the act becomes like a reflex. Role of parents. Get the child started with the correct habit right from the very beginning. Ensure that the child has adequate opportunity to follow the right habit. Direct every emotional prompting and experience towards forming the desired habits. Motivation should be kept high in the early stage of learning. Maintain training regularly because no habit results when the effort is irregular. Routine habits such as eating, sleeping, brushing, dressing, toileting, reading. Breaking and undesirable habits. Every child has few or more undesirable habits. Hence, breaking is an undesirable habit is of great importance for parents. The below given techniques are effective to break the undesirable habits. Substitution method. Parents should try to prevent undesirable habit by simultaneously replacing it with another response. Change of cue method. Remove the child from the place the habit is developed and in an entirely new atmosphere. Toleration method. It is the gradual substitution of an undesirable habit with a desirable one. Now let us see the influence of child rearing on the development of children. Children brought up at one parent, diverse families are with problems, insecure, prone to bad habits, unable to solve problems, and more of academic failures. Children of democratic parents were rated as responsible, ambitious, emotionally mature, popular with peers, persevering, helpful, leadership qualities, interesting, competent, understanding, tried new things, and sympathetic. Children of authoritarian family were inactive, aimless, selfish, little brats, and an introvert. Girl children of permissive parents are aggressive, aimless with unsocializing personality problems, but boys are affected more. They exhibited selfishness, aggressive, evasive, aimless, uninteresting, and withdrawn. In another research, it was found that children from democratic atmosphere were socially outgoing, had emotional control, were well behaved, excelled in activities. Children from permissive indulgence homes were relatively inactive, lacking in originality, and had inferior social status. Breastfed children are grown better in height and weight. Morbidity and mortality rates are higher among artificially fed babies. Too early and very late weaning affects the child's personality development in later years. Freud, the psychologist, stated that thumb sucking is the outcome of improper feeding and weaning practices. Premature or severe toilet training may affect the child's long-term adjustment adversely. The problem children manifested symptoms such as conduct disturbances, delayed motor development, speech problems, physical symptoms, and emotional problems such as unnecessary fear, defiance, continuation of wetting, etc. Now you have learned the styles of child rearing practices and various areas of child rearing practices. These child rearing practices are the significant aspect in shaping an individual's personality. Child rearing is a creative art of a parent through which a child can be molded into a better individual in every aspect. Becoming a parent is one of the most rewarding experiences in one's life. Having a child and rearing is not only a human experience but also the most demanding and responsible act. Child rearing practices are the transmission of the tradition, beliefs, culture, and cognitive actions from parents to the offspring. Since human babies are most vulnerable compared to babies of all other animal species, dependent on caretaker for shelter, food, personal cleanliness, and socialization is more. The best aptitude of the parents towards the rearing of the children forms a great good attitude. Thank you, students, for patient hearing. Have a good day. Let us meet in the next class.